Hello everyone, my name is Steve Smith. This is the HO Scale Sierra Valley and Harbor Junction Model Railroad, a simplified layout tour. I'll take you along and touch on some brief subjects. Here you see Smith's Brothers two-story warehouse that was kit bashed from a couple of kits. You'll see a lot of the 3D printed details that myself and my brother, we work on in our spare time. And we go to the various train shows and we do some very limited sales. If you follow along, I'll take you on a little tour, show you a few stops along the way. I hope you enjoy. This here is a recent addition. So-called junkyard, scrap yard, scrap pile, whatever you want to call it. Just a bunch of junk thrown around by the various industries, discards and whatnots along the pike. This is along the back side of my late uncle, Don. This was his 6-stall roundhouse he was working on that I inherited. And it's going to sit fairly nice here along the Sierra Valley. A lot of my rock work is done with wall spackling, mud, people call it, drywall mud. The overall effect is pretty good when you slap it on and paint it up with various acrylic washes and watercolors and some just basic like latex household paint. There's my Diamond brand turntable that I'm working on right now. A scratch-built brass arch. It will be operational. Here you see the roundhouse that my dad was doing before he passed away. So I've inherited two beautiful roundhouses from past family members, and they sit really nice next to each other. Most of my backdrop is commercially available. Printouts, cutouts, printings from the internet, along with some plastic pieces that I've kit bashed and put together to achieve the overall effect. Along the way here, we see a 2-stall engine house that I've converted into a caboose repair shop. Most of my rolling stock is from Roundhouse and Athearn, with the exception of the locomotives. Most are Atlas, some Catos, and various companies. I have a few brass steam engines, but most of my stock is from Atlas and Cato. I like the Cato drives. They run real smooth, especially in the diesels. They're hard to beat, the pulling power and just the sheer smoothness of the drives. Over here you can kind of see an overall shot of the yard here at the Sierra Valley shops. The overhead crane that I purchased from a recent train show. You can see the 3D printed shipping containers that I do here. And like I said, I do my 3D printings. I have an ANET A6 3D printer. If you follow along with my YouTube channel, you'd see some of these the videos that I've posted in the previous installments, and you can see how I did those. If you follow along here, we come up into the big city, I call it. It's yet unnamed, but it's probably going to be Sierra Valley, of course. Most everything you see here is kit bashed or kit mingled, if you will, some variant or another. Again, you can see how I stack up my backdrops with commercially available products, internet printings, some 3D printings from yours truly, and a large variety of kit bashed structures. Moving right along, there's a scratch built highway overpass that I did, which is merely just some bended wire from a TIG welding, MIG welding, I guess you want to call it, some TIG, MIG wire welding wire that I've bent, and I think the size of the welding wire was pretty prototypically as close to real fencing that I could find, so that's why I just chose that wire. The screening is wedding veil material called tulle, which you can get at any fine craft shop like Joann Fabrics, Michaels, those types of stores. And it turns out pretty good once you spray it with a little bit of silver paint. Most of my road work, the concrete, is done with the same drywall spackling material that I use for my rock work that you can see. Here's a nice up close of how the rock work comes out. You just put it on your putty knife and spread it around, and you get a really nice carved effect. It doesn't take too long to smear it around and let it dry overnight, and wash it with whatever diluted paint you can get your hands on. Like I said, I use a lot of acrylics, latex household paint. It works pretty good. Most of my track is Flex Track, Atlas, Snap Track. Very, very little bit of hand laid here and there, but most of it is commercially available track. It's all Code 100. It's very economical for me to use Code 100. I use a DC based setup. I run an old Trawler Auto Pulse Twin Momentum 5 power pack that I picked up back in 1988 when I started all of this in my first layout home. This particular layout has been moved several times in between various homes, apartments, and places that I've lived in the past 30 years or so. So its configuration has changed a little bit, but the overall effect of the layout when I first originally designed it is pretty much the same. It's a folded C-shape, single track mainline, and it runs over itself, and it works out pretty good. Here in the valley, I've called this Ansel's Ridge, named after a good friend of mine. You can see the rock work that I've been using, which is a variety of spackling compound and dirt, real rocks, some ceiling tiles that I've broken apart and stacked up, pieces of styrofoam, pretty much anything I could get my hands on to stack up and paint and just create an overall valley effect, I guess you want to call it. The bridge in the foreground is completely scratch built, minus the bridge in the center, which is a kit bashed Atlas piece, and the side pieces, which are Atlas pieces. It's all been kit bashed. The actual uprights are scratch built. The center girders are cardboard pieces that I've sliced with X-Acto knife, and it's a pretty decent effect. Painted with Rust-Oleum flat black. My waterfalls are done with a method from the great Malcolm Furlow. He's been an idol of mine for, well, pretty much most of my modeling career, which goes back to 1987 when I really started into it. He uses plastic resin dripped over an angel hair product that you can get at a craft store. His articles appeared in Model Railroad, and you can look him up and see exactly how it's done. The overall effect is really, really cool, in my opinion. As we proceed along through some tunnels here, these tunnel portals were also from my late Uncle Don. He scratch built those, and they fit really nice here into the railroad. The lumber area in the background is a nod to my Uncle Don. He did a lot of kit bashing and scratch building of many of the items you see in this view here. So that's his little area there that I've done, especially for Uncle Don. This particular piece is a little diorama scene that I take to some of the model railroad shows that I go to, and I put them on display. A lot of it is from Atlas, the water tower in particular, the little shanty. That's a Woodland Scenics shed there. A lot of the rock work and the scenery you see is done with, again, the wall spackling, just kind of carved. The staircase going up to the little tower there is completely scratch built. The front of that tower building is scratch built. I only had 3 walls of an Atlas tower, so you can see what I did there with what I had available to me. It's kind of funny. And we'll zoom out a little bit. And here you see we come into the namesake area of Harbor Junction. I really like doing harbor scenery, and I've been working on much of these pieces for over 25 years now. Most notably the bridge in the foreground, this Scherzer rolling drawbridge. That's completely scratch built with card stock, paper stock, some plastic pieces, but that was all completely scratch built. Some of the connecting pieces are kit bashed Atlas pieces and various bits and pieces. The Warren Truss Bridge in the very back is completely scratch built out of balsa and cardboard. Here we go along the tracks. You can see here in another unnamed town. Probably going to call it Harbor Junction still, because it's part of the harbor. Not sure yet, but so far that's what I've come up with. You could see a nice close-up shot of little hobo walking with his little pet elephant. Kind of looks like the circus went out of business, or Great Depression hit and nobody has money to go see the circus. So he's just walking his elephant along there, along the road. A lot of that debris that you see is just from the scrap box. Little old tires and pallets and what I can get my hands on. Most of my trees and foliage come from real pieces of weeds, tree limbs, what I can get my hands on for the armatures, and they turn out pretty neat. And then I just sprinkle some Woodland Scenics foliage over the top of it, and it creates some pretty interesting tree-like sculptures. This deck bridge that I'm working on is completely scratch built. It's all balsa and like a basswood. That's in its beginning stages, I guess, if you will. I still have to go around the sides here and make my uprights, and here you can kind of see it disappearing into the big city area. And we'll zoom in a little close here. This is one of my favorite scenes. It's a motorcycle shop. You got some guys with their bikes gassing up for the big rally tonight. You can see all the details strewn about, and I get a lot of comments on it. And most of the motorcycles are from Woodland Scenics. There's a few little scratch-built pieces in there, here and there. This is the Busted Knuckle Garage. I take this one to shows too, and I get a lot of people asking me how I did it, and where all my details come from, and that's another story in itself. It's got fully done detail inside and out, and it's a favorite among a lot of the goers at the shop, at the swap meets. Next up is my JL Innovative bar and grill. I've named it Lou's Place, and it's kind of been taken over by the same bike rally going on. So I call this kind of like a biker's row here. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast myself, so it's just kind of a quick nod to my family heritage and some of the things that I like to do other than model railroading. If you look closely, there's my little Star Wars nod. Han Solo and Chewbacca are bikers. Isn't that just great? It's a little fun there. As we travel along, this is relatively a newer section. My grandson is getting into the modeling, and we've been building him a city with a yard underneath and some various details. And he's really coming along nicely. He's 12 years old. He's got himself a little workbench here, and he comes over and visits, and we work on the trains together. So it's kind of a neat little area coming along. What I'm going to do now is kind of pan out so you can kind of see the overall size. It's in a 15 by 15 area of my basement, and you can kind of see the overall size of everything. I've been working on the indexing system for my turntable. I'm almost done. Most of my sensors are installed, and I'm working on a nice little control panel for it. So that should be operational before the summer's over. This little switch panel here was one of the items that my dad was building. He installed all the switches and the LED lights, but unfortunately never got to get it to work. So I took liberty of trying to figure out what he was doing, did some rewiring, and now it's operational. So it was kind of a neat little thing to get that going. Nice little tribute to my dad here up in the corner here, a little purple smiley face. Purple was his favorite color, so I just had to give him a little nod there. There's my auto pulse. twin momentum that I was talking about. These are really, really good, strong, old DC power packs. And you can see here, mine's in really, really good shape. That is a coveted piece. And I really like how they operate. I bought a spare just in case this one goes. And I do have the single momentum as well to do my siding work and some of my little switching that I do. So, anyways, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed what I've showed you today. And feel free to drop me a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you want to see something in particular up close. Maybe I can do a little more in-depth video on it. Again, thanks for watching. This is the Sierra Valley and Harbor Junction HO Scale Model Railroad. Thanks for watching.